People often completely misunderstand independent older men. Society looks at a man who enjoys his own company, who declines social invitations, and who stands firmly on his own 2 feet, and they make dangerous assumptions. Some assume they've become cold, others believe they've given up on relationships, and some think they simply don't need anyone anymore. But the truth is far more interesting and profoundly deeper. Independence isn't something most men are born with. It is something they earn. It is meticulously shaped by decades of heavy responsibility, crushing disappointment, towering success, bitter failure, and brutal experience. By the time many men reach their 60s, the psychological architecture of their minds undergoes a massive paradigm shift. They begin seeing the world through an entirely different lens. They stop asking, "How do I fit into everyone else's expectations?" And they start asking, "How do I live a life that reflects my own values?" Today we are going to explore the psychology behind older men's independence. We will dissect the 7 profound shifts in the mature masculine mind and reveal why this independence often becomes one of the greatest sources of confidence, peace, and fulfillment in later life. Let us uncover the truth. Section 1. True independence begins with self-trust. In developmental psychology, many younger men operate with what is known as an external locus of evaluation. They constantly seek reassurance from the tribe. They ask for opinions before making decisions. They worry about disappointing their bosses, their partners, and their peers. They chronically second-guess themselves, paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice. But decades of brutal lived experience changes that. After solving hundreds of complex problems, after recovering from devastating financial and emotional setbacks, and after surviving challenges they once believed that would absolutely break them, older men begin implicitly trusting their own judgment. They have learned that they won't always make perfect decisions, but they've also learned something vastly more important. They can handle the consequences. That specific psychological confidence creates unshakable independence, not because they arrogantly believe they know everything, but because they have proven to themselves, time and time again, that they can adapt to almost anything. Instead of constantly asking, "What do other people think?" they begin asking, "What do I believe is right?" That internal shift marks the true beginning of genuine, masculine independence. But self-trust alone doesn't explain everything. Another profound psychological change quietly reshapes the way older men live. Section 2. They become significantly less driven by external validation. For much of a man's life, he is biologically and socially motivated by recognition, a corporate promotion, compliments from women, societal status, peer approval. Success often becomes a metric measured entirely by other people's opinions. Then, age brings the ultimate gift: perspective. Older men begin noticing that external validation is terrifyingly temporary. Praise fades, job titles disappear upon retirement, careers end. Public attention rapidly moves on to the next generation. If a man's identity depends entirely on those external factors, he will feel profoundly lost when they inevitably vanish. That is exactly why many independent older men begin building their confidence strictly from within. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung called this individuation. They no longer need constant recognition to know their value. Their self-worth comes from living according to their own ironclad principles, keeping promises, acting with integrity, treating others with respect, doing what they firmly believe is right, even when absolutely no one is watching. That quiet, internal confidence is one of the strongest psychological shifts that comes with age. It makes a man immune to manipulation because he can no longer be bought with cheap flattery. And once a man no longer depends on approval, his relationship with solitude changes completely. Section 3. Solitude becomes the ultimate source of clarity. Many people in modern society falsely associate being alone with being lonely. But clinical psychology tells us something incredibly important. Chosen solitude can dramatically strengthen emotional well-being, especially when it is balanced with meaningful human connection. older men often begin deeply appreciating moments of quiet because those moments allow them to think with pristine clarity, without constant noise, without endless digital distractions. They reflect, they plan, they read, they pray or meditate, they work on hobbies, they simply enjoy the perfection of the present moment. They discover that being comfortable alone is not a sign of isolation. It is a sign that their happiness no longer depends entirely on constant stimulation or the immediate approval of others. For many older men, solitude is not an empty room. It is a sacred sanctuary where they reconnect with themselves. It is the laboratory where they refine their independence. And that profound inner clarity changes the way they see nearly every single relationship in their lives. Section 4. They become ruthlessly selective with relationships. Once an older man becomes entirely comfortable with his own solitude, one of the biggest psychological shifts occurs. It is not that men over 60 stop caring about people. It is that they completely stop confusing quantity with quality. When they were younger, they often felt obligated to maintain every friendship, to attend every gathering, to say yes to every single invitation. Over time, they realize that being surrounded by people doesn't always create a meaningful life. In fact, it often creates a highly stressful one. Some relationships leave you inspired, others leave you completely exhausted. Some encourage growth, others constantly create tension and drama. Independent older men begin paying fierce attention to one simple biological question. How do I feel after spending time with this person? If the answer is peaceful, respected, and understood, the relationship grows stronger. If the answer is drained, anxious, or constantly criticized, they gradually, unapologetically create distance. Not because they've become unfriendly or bitter, but because they finally understand that emotional energy is a strictly limited resource. Instead of chasing more relationships, they invest deeply in the right ones. And protecting their relationship starts with protecting something even more valuable, their time. Section 5. They stop living by other people's timetables. For the vast majority of adulthood, many men live their entire existence according to someone else's schedule. The company, the customers, the children, the family calendar, waking up to jarring alarms, racing through traffic. Deadlines become the normal state of reality. Free time becomes an incredibly rare, fleeting luxury. But after 60, whether through retirement or a deliberate shift in lifestyle, many finally experience something they have missed for decades: choice. They decide when to wake up, when to exercise, when to read, when to travel, when to simply sit on the porch and enjoy a quiet, rain-streaked afternoon. Psychologically, this creates a massive, powerful sense of autonomy. Research in behavioral science consistently shows that people who feel in absolute control of their daily lives experience significantly greater life satisfaction and dramatically lower stress. Older men recognize that independence isn't just about living alone. It is about having the sovereign freedom to decide exactly how each day is spent. And once they taste that ultimate freedom, they become fiercely careful about ever giving it away. That incredible freedom also fundamentally changes the way they approach the storms of life. Section 6. They become vastly more emotionally resilient. Life has already tested the senior man. He has survived the crucible. He has experienced profound setbacks, crushing financial pressure, terrifying health scares, the agonizing loss of loved ones, career disappointments. He has lived through moments he never imagined surviving. Each challenge quietly, brutally taught him the exact same lesson. I have been through difficult times before, and I made it through. That accumulated memory transitions into unshakable psychological strength. Instead of panicking when life suddenly becomes uncertain, they respond with patience. Instead of reacting immediately, they pause, they think, they adjust, they move forward. This doesn't mean older men never feel sadness or fear. It means they implicitly trust their own ability to recover. Resilience isn't the absence of emotion. It is the quiet, ironclad confidence that your emotions do not have to control your decisions, and that quiet resilience becomes one of the strongest foundations of their independence. Which brings us to the final psychological shift, perhaps the most important realization of all. Section 7. They finally realize that true freedom begins within. Many people in society believe that independence is about becoming cold. They think it is about building walls and needing absolutely no one. But psychologically, that is simply not true. Healthy independence isn't emotional isolation. It is emotional stability. Independent older men still deeply value family. They appreciate loyal friends. They welcome genuine, peaceful companionship. But they no longer depend on other people to define their identity or validate their existence. Their confidence comes from living according to their own principles. Their purpose comes from meaningful daily habits. Their peace comes from knowing they can enjoy life whether they are surrounded by a dozen people or spending a quiet afternoon entirely alone. They do not reject human connection. They simply refuse to build their happiness on a foundation they cannot fully control. That is the true psychology behind an older man's independence. It is not about pushing people away. It is about becoming so internally strong, so psychologically sovereign, that your well-being no longer depends entirely on someone else's approval, attention, or presence. If you are a man who has walked through the fire and earned your independence, know that you are not broken. You are a king who has successfully secured his borders. I want to hear from you. Head down to the comments and tell me, at what age did you finally trust your own judgment over the opinions of others? And how has that independence changed your life? Your scars and your wisdom will help guide the younger men who are still fighting blindly through the storm. If you found value in this deep dive into male psychology, please hit the like button, subscribe to the Sage Academy channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson. Thank you for watching. Until next time, guard your sanctuary and embrace your freedom.